What's up, Moto Buddies? Mike here, Taco Moto Co. Got a Dream Dual Sport here. This is a 2500 EXCF set up for the guy who who came up with the Atlas Throttle Control, cruise control. In a minute, we'll show him, we'll bring him into the video, and then we'll have him install his cruise control device on the throttle of this bike. It's not really something that the dirt bike guys use. That crowd tends to not have, a lot of need for cruise control, which is kind of a highway thing. But if you have a dual sport that you're setting up to do some overland stuff, some like highway sections, you may want to have a cruise control on here, and he's going to show us how to put that on and what its features are. It's a pretty cool little device. The big bike guys are probably more familiar with it than the smaller dual sport guys are. So let's take a look at this particular one for the back end. Let's look at this tire. This is the Moto Tractionator. I like this tire a lot. I'm a big fan of it. This is the intermediate terrain, so it's the middle. There's one softer and one harder. This is the one right in the middle. And this has a new mousse in here. This is the Enduro mousse. The Techno mousse. That's a outfit out of Italy, and this is the Enduro version of the Techno mousse, and I'm liking it a lot. They're tricky to install. It's got a center rib, which means instead of it being perfectly round, it has a bump where the mousse goes down into the drop center of the rim. So around the inside diameter there is more material, and that fills in the drop center of the rim. So as the mousse ages, it will I want to use the word deflate, so it's not really deflating, but it will last longer, and there's more material in there than a standard round mousse, and that makes it a little trickier to put in. So if you've got like a Rabiconda or one of the knockoffs of that, they do a really good job. You almost need that for this type of mousse. If you have a standard round mousse, especially a soft one, you can probably put that in on the garage floor on a 5-gallon bucket with standard tools like 15-inch curved levers. But this particular one, this Enduro mousse, is a little tougher than that. So something to be aware of, but I do like it, and all the reports coming out of Europe have been really positive about it. And it doesn't, here's one more thing about it that I think is kind of game-changing, is it doesn't age out. There's no expiration date. The Michelins, in my opinion, have been the longest shelf life mousse out there, much longer than some of the nitros, much longer than some of the other ones. And now this one claims to have an even longer shelf life. So it'll last longer in the wheel, and it will last longer sitting on the shelf. And they don't even bother to put an expiration date on them because of the fact that they just have come up with a formula that's super long-lived. So that's impressive. And this has turned out to be a good mousse. I'm liking it. A couple of cool things here on the back end. So we've thrown on this Tusk axle spacer. These allow you to move the axle in and out with just the nut there. And then this is one of my favorite new things, the STR. It's not new, it's kind of new to me. I wasn't really familiar with these guys for a while. And that shark fin back there is made out of fiberglass material. It's called G10, and you can read about it. And it's just got, it's very, very light. That's the main reason that I like it, is it's super light, and it has a caliper carrier. The other light shark fin is the Moto billet, which for a long time has been my favorite. This one is possibly my new favorite. It offers just really good protection. I like the fact that it has the carrier. It kind of dresses up the rear end a little bit over having the stock carrier. That's this piece here that I'm talking about. It's the caliper carrier. And then here we've got the axle. This is an axle spacer, and it has a little cup over so that you're protecting the wheel bearings from like spray, mud, especially pressure washing. And that's so that's a whole cool rear wheel setup. And then we've got the wheels balanced as far as the rim lock goes. And then we're running a Warp 9 rim lock on this one, the Warp 9 titanium rim lock. Up here, let's take a look at the rack. So this is by True North Motos, and these guys are out of Washington, and they do really, really cool racks. They're probably right now, they're not the only guys making racks for the EXC bikes, but they're for sure the best. There's another outfit called Globe Trottin', and they make racks, and these are preferred. I like these better. There's a couple reasons why. I think these have a lot more mounting options. They're a bit lighter. One of the advantages of the rack on a KTM is the subframe only goes here to about the end of the seat. So it's all aluminum down in here. You have 2 spars. There is one that anchors here. So the subframe ladder comes from this point, and then there's another point here under the seat. I guess I can pull the seat. Maybe we can see if we can find that. No, it's buried in there. So from about here to here, you have 2 spars that come together, and then they cross, and then they end right about here. And in fact, they end exactly at this bolt. This bolt is at the very end of the subframe. So the subframe ends essentially where my finger is. So that means the rest of the back end of the tail is just plastic. So if you're gonna go on some long rides and you wanna throw some soft bags on here, the problem that you're gonna have is all that weight's gonna be sitting right on the plastic back end of the bike, and that's an issue. So when you use a rack, you distribute all that weight. Now you're sending it into the subframe and then down here to the bottom of the frame, just above the foot peg. So you can add a ton of weight and it'll carry it. So that's a big advantage. The disadvantage is the complexity of that. You've now got all these bend points. And so if you wipe out, if you eat it, crash, you've got all of the material here that in the crash can bend and deflect. And so that could be a problem. So there's some advantages, some very strong advantages, a few disadvantages to going with a rack system. If you can get away, so if you are a crasher, if you're the kind of guy that lays your bike down, the rack still may work for you, but it's just something to consider and to keep in mind as you're weighing out your luggage options. Not having a rack would be to your advantage because your soft bags can lay over, and Giant Loop and Green Chili ADV. There's a couple of guys that make a really nice little aluminum plate that you would put over your muffler to protect from heat. And you may want to look into one of those options. So I'm not strongly advocating for or against a rack. So I would say this: if you're looking at a rack, get a True North. If you have any reservations about adding a rack to your bike and having that bend in a crash, then look at just going with soft luggage. But with a KTM, you're going to have issues with weight on the tail. So all of these things need to be factored out in the way you pack your bike. There's no right way, wrong way, or best way. There's just whatever one works for you. So I do like this rack. I like all the attachment points, and I think they're the best rack out there. Back here on the end, also out of the Northwest, is the Enduro Plate. We're a big fan. We use these all the time. These save your plate if you go down and crash. As far as the rear tail light, that's the Moto Tidy Tail. That's the turn, run, and brake features all in one housing. And we have a new version 2 coming out soon, and it's going to have a license plate downlight. So up to this point, we've not had a downlight. Version 2 coming out soon, early spring, maybe summer, early summer, late spring, early summer. Will have that downlight. We just don't have it available quite yet. We've got the Graves slip-on. So as far as aftermarket pipes go, different pipes give you different power performance characteristics. One of the easier options is to just swap out the end cap to retain the stock muffler, which on these KTMs is a very good muffler and very light, and then just throw the Pro Moto end cap on there. And there's a real good argument to be made to go in that route. This is the Graves pipe, and I'm a big fan. Some of the things that I like about it are it's full titanium. Everything that's metal on this pipe, with the exception of a couple little things, the rivets, and maybe the inner through pipe is titanium. It's all titanium. It's not a hybrid pipe where I've seen some out there, some of the other brands. What you get is that the only titanium is really the skin, the outer skin. And like FMF 4.1 factory replica is really nice, and it's kind of got a blue anodized color to it. Super duper slick. This one, everything is titanium, even the mounting brackets, all the hardware, everything. It's all titanium, and so it is incredibly light. And it also has this removable insert, and I took the bolts out so you could see. It's got this spark arrestor screen, and then this is the quiet insert. So without this pipe, it has the biggest, or without this insert, that's the biggest outlet of any aftermarket pipe out there. So if you're looking for a pipe that will give you dual use, really this is the one, because I've got, with this one pipe, I can pull this insert out, and now I'm running Supermoto, wide open desert, anywhere where sound is not an issue. And this pipe is absolutely loud. It is the loudest pipe that I've ever run, and it's got a deep, throaty, loud tone to it. Super loud. Hear it for miles and miles. If that's your thing, then this is the pipe for you. Very, very good mid-range to top-end power. Way better than the stock can with the Pro Mobility end cap. It is a significant improvement. Now, that may not show up in raw, real horsepower numbers on the dyno. We've yet to do a full test on this. But as far as the butt dyno, it is absolutely solid gold in the mid-range and the top end. And then by throwing in the silent insert, that tones down the harshness of the sound. It drops the dBs considerably. It also pushes the power band lower. So the mid and top end are not as responsive. They're not as strong, not as powerful. However, it really warms up the bottom end and opens up the throttle sweep down low. And so if you're running single track or technical off-roading, or you need a spark arrestor and you want a quieter pipe, then the insert is what you'd want to pop in there. And that's a single bolt. It just takes a couple of minutes to pop that in and out. So for me, personally, I would run that pipe, that muffler with the insert in all the time. I'm not the kind of rider that wants that ultra powerful, strong mid to top end. I don't need that. So I'd never take that out. But if you were the guy who wanted to have basically two pipes in one, this is the first pipe that I've seen out there. And if there's others that give you such a broad range of power dynamics in one slip-on, let me know in the comments. But I don't know of any that is quite as adaptable as this one. So it's very, very impressive. I'm really thrilled about this pipe, and the fact that Graves has decided to get into the dual sport market. They are well known and respected in the sport bike world and have been around forever. So for them to jump over into dirt bikes and the dual sport world is a big deal. And this is their first offering for the 500, and it's incredible. So it is my new favorite pipe. I took off another pipe on my personal bike to put this one on, this muffler, and I'm gonna run it because it's now my new favorite muffler by far. So let's look at the suspension here. We've got this full setup has been resprung and revalved with Racetech internals, and then the Racetech bladder. And then this is a cool little deal. So this is the STR System Tech Racing, the same guys that made that shark fin. This is a little wrench here that you could use to change your high speed. So your low speed will go here on the screw, and then your high speed out here. A lot of guys don't have the 17 millimeter wrench with them, or they don't want to carry a wrench for that. And so you can loosen the nut. If you need to do a couple revolutions, you could just take this off, turn it and move it and turn it as a wrench. And then when you've got it put in the position you want, you can just secure that and lock it, and it stays there. So that's really cool. And then we put on this KTM. This is a hard part preload adjustment tool. And so with an 8 millimeter socket, you can come in here on the side and then turn that. So if you're the kind of guy who's riding your bike loaded and then unloaded, you're going to be changing your sag often. And instead of having that plastic ring, which tends to get boogered out, and then it's difficult to get a couple of good revolutions. You know, you need to turn that 3, 4, 5, 6 times. That's kind of a drag with the stock setup. So this allows you really easy and quick changing of your preload on your spring if you're going to be using your bike for a lot of different purposes. Down here we've got the Pro Mobility Evo. I think these are the Evo Airs. Does it say? Yeah, the Evo Air. I like those. I like to run them in the down position. This is the Arizona Ride Shop brake tip, folding, very cool. Recluse CX clutch, we're a big fan of those, like those. And then we've got the thin oil cap, because you just have a real tight clearance issue with this. This is the P3 Max. So the P3 Max comes further back. If you have the standard P3, it ends somewhere around here. And so the Max goes all the way over to here. And then P3 Racing, they also make this really cool frame guard. And so you blinged out on the P3 carbon. So light. These two pieces together, they just seem to be weightless. They seem to not weigh anything at all. Very, very cool and very functional. On the radiator hoses, we have the Samco. These are the Samco Sport, and this retains the thermostat. We are big advocates of running your thermostat, especially on specifically and especially on the fuel injected bikes, and especially the multi-purpose bikes. Now, if you have a track bike, that's not a multi-purpose bike, is it? You're running it on the track, and so if you need to keep your coolant temps, first of all, when you go to the track, you typically go on a nice day. You're not out there in the snow, in the rain, when it's super cold, and so the track bike tends to be kind of a fair weather, not always, but typically like a fair weather machine, where ambient air temperatures are going to support good coolant temperatures for the ECU, for the fuel programming, for its use. And if not, then track guys tend to be a little more savvy than other riders. They're a little bit more involved in engine tuning and engine dynamics, and so it's not unusual to see a track bike sometimes where a guy will duct tape off some of his radiator, half of his radiator. So he's trying to manage coolant temps. If we're out dual sporting, we might be down in the valley, get up into the mountains, it's snowing on us, all of these various engine temperatures are happening, and we want to maintain a constant temperature for optimal fuel the air-fuel ratios. And so how we do that on a multi-use bike is with the thermostat. So I absolutely don't recommend on a multi-sport, dual sport bike taking off the thermostat. That's something that you do if you've got a bike where you're a sophisticated rider and you're monitoring engine temps, and you know that you need to block off some of your radiators some of the time to keep water temps up. So for the rest of us, and for everybody, for the most part, leave a thermostat on. The Samco hoses are a super nice upgrade. These are basically lifetime. These hoses here, they're going to last the life of this bike, and they're never going to leak. And they're dual compound, so they have the inner, where the water flows is a very slippery. There's inner compound and then the outer, and there's multi-layers here. I've seen the stock hoses develop little tears on the inside, and then they will leak out through the hose, and where the fabric cords are, like on an end here, you will see it's leaking. And so a guy will say, well, I got a hose leak. He'll cut off a little bit of the hose or clean it and put it back on. It still leaks. That's because the hose itself is leaking. It's somewhat endemic to the stock hoses, and so these Samcos are a massive upgrade. Since we're running a Get ECU on this bike, we don't have the O2 because the O2 is not used, so we've removed it and capped that off. Let's look at these radiator guards. These are from ET Racing, and these are full box guards. I like these a ton because they completely wrap the radiator on all sides, front, back, side. They do a really good job of coming down really low and protecting the bottom of the radiator. So they are tricky to put on in that you have to take off, you have to drain your coolant, take off the radiator entirely. And then because you're boxing the radiator, you've got two pieces, they bolt together. There's a lot of screws, a lot of bolts. So it's a little bit fussy in that there's a lot going on, but in my opinion, it's worth it. It's worth the effort. Also, if you're running an aftermarket tank, it can be difficult to get the radiator shrouds up and over the front. Well, as it happens, the screw stud extends maybe 1/4 of an inch back. It's a little tricky to see here, but I just have got the holes for the radiator side scoops pushed to the back of this. So rather than the radiator scoop sitting on the front of it, the little, the screw eyelet deal, whatever, on the plastic, instead of sitting on the front, I have it pushed into the back. It is absolutely secure. It ain't going anywhere. So it's just a little adaptation here on the other side. You might be able to see that a little better. If you look at your stock bike, the radiator comes, the shroud here, the plastic, comes around the front, and a screw goes through the front. So again, just the way the fitment is with this IMS tank and with all this going on, it just didn't do it, but it does fit really nicely in the back. So there might be some adaptations you have to do when you throw on an aftermarket component. It may fit really well, but there may be some small areas where it requires some readjustment of something else, and that's what we had to do here. Another thing that I like is on this, I just pulled it off. So if you pull it, it will release. Here you can see that little tab, and it goes into the hole, and so there it is. But in normal riding and high-speed riding, it's not coming off. Radiator fan fits on a little bracket, and that goes onto this box. So if you have a non-radiator bike, this this little piece would not be there, and you can use a Trail Tech or an aftermarket fan on this. Let's see what else. IMS, this is the IMS 3, I think it's a 3.9 gallon. They just came out with the 4.5, which is absolutely huge. That is a wraparound tank, so that 4.5 tank would come around and would cover the radiator shrouds. And if that was the case, you really wouldn't need radiator guards, because the gas tank is the radiator guard, and then the shroud, the side panel, the radiator scoop, mounts to the tank on the 4.5. We'll throw that on a bike and do a review of that. Up here on the front wheel, TM Design Works for the lug guards. These are awesome and super strong. I like those. Enduro Engineering, this is the fork puller. Also Race Tech, full Race Tech internals in here, and we did the gold valve conversion. So instead of having with these Explorer 48s where you have basically no, what am I trying to say? The clickers are almost ineffective. I've talked to a bunch of people trying to experiment with the stock Explorer 48s, trying to get some adjustability out of them, just changing the clickers to try to smooth them out. They're not my favorite fork. They do not like to be ridden hard or fast. And really what I think, and a lot of guys as well think, is changing out the internals to making them a true open chamber, split them up, dual function. So down at the bottom you have the compression, up at the top is the rebound. So basically going backwards in time to the old, like pre-16 open chamber KTM forks, WP forks is what you have to do. And regrettably, you have to spend money to go back to that style and setup. But that's kind of what you're faced with if you want something that's super adaptable and can be ridden at really high speeds. For general dual sporting use, I don't have a problem with the Explorer 48s, but if you're a rider who pushes that and you're going to override those, you really want to look at something. And there's lots of other options. There's cartridge inserts, Del Sagios. There's a ton of options. They're all really good. Any money you spend on your suspension is a wise investment. We like the Race Tech, and it does a good job. The fork shrinks, these are the wraps. They are super nice as far as like dressing up the front of the bike. They do change the look a lot, and I like those. Let's see, anything else skip to before we could move on? So Molecule, this is the new version of the skid plate, and it has a bigger, it didn't used to come up this high. It kind of ended out here, and now it's got an extension here that covers the water pump. Really good. We like the Molecule. It's very light, and one of the reasons why I like the Molecule, a couple here. It's made out of that UHMW material, which is a very, very slippery, very resilient plastic material. It does not actually have Teflon in it, but it is impregnated with some sort of material that sort of sheds itself as it slides over. And in the same way, again, this is not scientifically accurate, but in the same way, similar to how when a skate slides over ice, an ice skater, it melts and forms a little thin film of water, and the skate slides on the water, not the ice, as it's melting as it skates across. As this skid plate goes across, it's sort of shedding itself and then lubricating. The material is self-lubricating as it slides over a rock. Aluminum doesn't do that. Cutting board, there's a couple of skid plates out there that are made out of essentially cutting board type material. So this UHMW material is unique in using it. It's a very novel idea to use it as a skid plate, and Seth at Molecule came up with that. And maybe other guys are doing it, but I think he's executing it the best. The other thing I like about the Molecules is it has a stamped stainless steel bracket right back here. You're not going to be able to see it. Some skid plates out there get really fussy with the brackets. Some don't even have metal for the bracket. It's plastic material, the same plastic material that the plate is made out of. That is what the bracket in the rear is made out of. And I've seen countless guys who lose their plate, or their plate is dangling in the back because of some sort of malfunction with that in the rear, and that's never going to happen on the Molecule. So those are probably the two main reasons why we use those and recommend those over any other plates. We've used them all, we've wrecked them all, and we've yet to damage the Molecule, and those are my reasons why I use those the most. Reflex on the bar guards. Reflex because they have this little piece right here, this stainless steel cable, which allows the flex of the bars to be transmitted and not bound Pro Tapers, Pro Taper Evos. These are very flexible as far as a aluminum bar goes, maybe the most flexible. So you're trying to find, with handlebars, you're trying to find that balance between strength and flexibility. You can go full strength and then you have no flexibility. You can go full flexibility and have no strength. So if you're going to go with the rigid bar, I think that the Evos are probably the best way to go. As far as grips, I like these OD Rogues. Always my favorite. They air through really well, so you don't end up with like really sweaty hands. A lot of air channels here and super grippy. The bulletproof guards are not the bulletproof guard. These are bulletproof levers. I like these a lot. These haven't been out a whole long time. Enduro Engineering, I put these little grippy, this is like heat shrink, grip heat shrink. So when you got wet fingers, you've got some traction here on the lever. This is the sick ass over under kill switch. That frees up some space on the bars. Double take mirrors. Because you can't put, well, you could put a mirror here, but then you cock this way forward. That's super annoying. So I just run a little double take bar mirror and it lets you shoot a view right through your arm. It works good. Scott stabilizer, BRP sub mount, very nice. The free flow hose with the vent in here. Every now and then you should check your vent and make sure that it's not hissing and that you can blow through it. If you ever hear, you turn off your bike and it's hot and you hear some hissing, this may have been clogged. These are not foolproof. They're very good, but they're not foolproof and they can clog. And so if you ever hear any hissing, don't open the screw cap. Stand back, get yourself a ways back, and then pop this thing off. You very well may have some fuel. If you've overpressurized the tank, there's a lot of heat in the engine that's coming up into the tank. Plus there's ambient heat. And so the gas is expanding. Gas may boil. Gas boils at a very, very low temperature rate, especially when it's pressurized in the tank. So if your tank is puffed out, has grown in size, and is full of pressure, you'll hear it hissing. It'll kind of be hissing and talking to you. So do not remove the cap. It'll geyser straight out. Just stand back as far as you can. Use a stick if you want to, but pop this thing off and just let the heat of the engine dissipate out. Let the heat of the gas dissipate out. It's going to just vent. The VOCs are going to be coming out of here. The pressure will be coming out of here. It may take half an hour. But your bike is talking to you, and be aware of some of those conditions that may be happening. So we like the vented hose, but they're not 100% reliable all the time. And so it might be something that you would want to service every couple of oil changes, blow air in each direction, just to make sure there's no dirt or dust that's clogging that thing out. Trailtech Voyager Pro, very, very cool. Stout mount, Moto-minded stout mount. As far as Moto-minded, we've got the Moto-minded Epic Headlight. This is a dual element headlight. It has a Squadron Pro, which I think is 4,600 lumens, and then this S2. Altogether, this is, Chris will have to come into the comments and tell me, but I think it's 6,000 or 7,000 lumens. Lumens as a rating is kind of gimmicky, somewhat in the way that horsepower is kind of gimmicky. It depends on who's rating it, who's testing it. There's ways to cheat those numbers and fudge those numbers, and sellers often misrepresent and lie about numbers to sell Farkle and products. And so the rating of a headlight, just like the horsepower of rating of a product, always look at that skeptically. But I will say that this is a very bright light. And one of the advantages to having a dual split is you can aim one low and one high. So as we have this set up, the bigger light is aiming further down the trail. The smaller light is aiming lower and it's higher. And so it is aiming, it's missing the headlight. So we're aiming this one closer down at the ground to illuminate where we're going in the 20, 30 feet out. And then the bigger one, it's shooting out. So we're not having any fender interference, but we're shooting that the bottom one, the bigger one, out down the trail, a mile. If you're a woods rider, this bike's going to the northwest. So if you ride in woods, single track, anywhere where the throw of the light is, a quarter mile, maybe a half mile at best, but probably never more. And that tends to be more slower going, then that's really the light setup. That's a great one. We use the XL80 a lot, especially out here in the desert, because we're riding wide open. You might want to ride 70 miles an hour wide open on some 2-track out in the desert, and the XL80 would be the light for that. So these lights are kind of specialized in those ways. You can aim, so if you're in the desert, this is a good rider. This is a really good all-around light, so a very good all-use light. If I was in the desert, I would just take both of these. I might aim them both in the same direction, out a mile, you know, far out. But then again, I may not. I might like the fact that I've got very good light visibility down, you know, 100 feet ahead of me on the trail. So I like both lights. It's hard to pick a winner, but I would say that if you were a woods rider, a single track rider, I think the Epic is a better choice for that setup. But that doesn't mean that the XL80 isn't also a really damn good light. So do some homework on that. Ask us if you have any questions. We can help you decide. For the turn signals up front, we've got the Taco Moto fork wrap turn signals, and these are set up so they also work as running lights. We've removed the smog here. There's one of the plugs. We left the frame canister in, the charcoal canister in the frame. We also did that because, and we didn't convert this bike with the, what do you call it? The coolant reservoir tank, because this is not a desert single track bike. It's not out in the super high temp, super high heat, and kind of not needed. So we didn't do that. Over here on the front, we've got the Motos. This is the Tractionator. This is the soft terrain tire. So in the rear, we have the intermediate, that's the medium. And up front, we have the soft. And this is the 90-100 size. So this is like their fatty size. It's pretty big. And then STR, again, for the front caliper guard. This is carbon fiber. The back one is, they call it G10, and it's a fiberglass compound, and the front is carbon fiber. This is, without a doubt, the lightest that I've seen front shark fin, and I love the look of it. That TM design work, we talked about this thing on the other side, and this continues on and protects this little vulnerable spot down here in the back of the, it protects. The other thing too that I like is it comes down far enough where if something was gonna hit your rotor, or not your rotor, but your caliper, this has got a nice, there's a gap here, and so as you roll past that rock or whatever, hopefully you're gonna miss your caliper and not hit the caliper. I think that's super cool. Moose in the front as well. Let's move over here. On the bottom of the tank, we've got the Taco Moto fuel tap. This is the thinnest tap that's out there. So the stock one comes down another 10 millimeters or so. It's really thick and it's plastic. This one is CNC, and we've got it anodized, super nice. And then one of the issues that you have with the aftermarket tanks is all of the kinks and bends that you have to adapt to for the fuel line routing. And we are coming out, we're just not quite there yet, but we're coming out with kits. So depending on what bike you have and what tank you get, we'll have specifically pre-bent hoses with specific links and all of the components that you need to put that aftermarket tank. Otherwise, you end up spending a good bit of time screwing around with that. And that's what we had to do on this one, and it tends to be a hassle. So if you just like the idea of something plug and play, we'll have kits, fuel line hose kits, that'll be available for that. Dirt Tricks dome washer, that's a super nice upgrade. If you know what that is, that the stock dome washer is mild steel, and it releases, the preload goes away, and then you have oil leaks out of the primary sprocket, the O-ring in the back, it will leak. So this is a massive upgrade. And then the Recluse CX, we talked about that. Fastway, this is the Pro Moto Billet kickstand, which is really cool. It has way more strength than the stock one, and it's rebuildable, and it's strong. It's much stronger, but one of the things that people ask is it strong enough? Let me say this: no kickstand is strong enough to use the kickstand to kickstart your bike. But this is absolutely strong enough, and this should last the life of the bike. So as long as you're not standing on this and using it as a prop with you on it, kicking your bike, you'll have plenty of life out of this, the life of the bike. Back here, bulletproof guard. This protects the vulnerable 2 drop downs for the chain guide and keeps rocks from getting in here if you do a lot of rock riding and smashing that and breaking those off. DDC on the rear sprocket, and we're running the stock gearing, so 1448, which is super adequate, very, very usable for all kinds of terrains. The other thing I was going to say on the dome washer is the stock primary gear up here has rubber sound dampeners. It's part of the DOT requirements for this bike. Take those off. I've seen where guys will try to install that aftermarket dome washer on the stock sprocket with the rubber on there. You can't do that. You have to take that off. Underneath the air filter here, we have a PC Racing air filter gasket. That's a neoprene gasket, like wetsuit material, that goes around the opening of the airbox for the contact surface area for the air filter and the air filter in the bike. And so now we don't have to grease the air filter anymore. And we also have a screenless so we've taken out the reeds. We have a screenless air filter cage, the PC Racing air filter gasket, and then a PC Racing filter skin. So quite a few things going on under the airbox to improve airflow and to keep the air as absolutely clean as possible. And then the other thing too is a twin air flame proof air filter. So there's a lot going on in the airbox. You can't really see any of that, so I won't get into that. And then what we just talked about, get ECU, traction control preloaded into this ECU. I did not put a traction control knob on here. Oh, I almost forgot. This is the Taco Moto left-hand switch, thin, and this allows us off on the headlight. And then this is the little scrambler size mirror from Double Take. Let's see if we missed anything else. Let's go back to traction control. So right now we don't have any traction control knobs. They're out of stock. Trying to get a new batch from Italy, and so we just didn't have one to put on this bike. So we just preloaded traction control to a pretty high level, I think maybe 8 or 9 on the stock ECU, and then when we get the knobs back in, we'll send them up one. Let's see, anti-gravity 8-cell battery. This is 220 cold cranking amps. That's the biggest, most powerful not biggest in size, but this is the most powerful battery that I found. If you know of a more powerful one, let me know. 220 cold cranking amps, massive. Our relays, I like to label these fan, lights, ECU, fan, lights, ECU. So if you ever have any trouble in the field with any of these systems, you can just swap these relays around and see if that fixed your problem. Very, very rare. Absolutely rare to have a relay problem, but KTM did a good job in relocating these on the 20 bikes. They used to be here under the side panel or under here, but now up on top they're easier to get to. Your fuses are right here and easy to service. These 2 fuses here on this side, they're spares. These are all the actives. You would be smart to print out from your service manual what circuits these fuses control, and then laminate that and keep that with you. You could laminate it and just put it right here under your seat, tape it to the inside of your airbox, whatever you wanted to do, but so that you would know if you blew a fuse, you would know what circuit that went to, or if you lost a circuit, if something wasn't working, you could grab that chart and see what was going on with the fuse pinouts on that. And then maybe the last thing we've got, I think we've covered everything, is seat concepts. This is the comfort width. So seat concepts come in 3 widths. Standard, which is the same width as stock. Comfort, which is what we have here, it balloons out a little bit in the tush in the back end. And then XL, which adds another, I don't know, inch or 2 on each side. It's very, very big. I personally don't care for the XLs because I stand a lot. And then these little bumps in the back seem to impede my ability to get super far back. And I like the comfort size. And this is the standard height. They come in low, standard, which is about the same size as stock, and then tall, which is obviously tall. So that is our walk around of this super dual sport. This is a dream dual sport right here. The rider of this bike is going to take this and use it to do a lot of light ADV light type of riding. And he's got all the gear and all the gizmos on here for, ultimate reliability, ultimate survivability. When you set up a track bike, your truck is right there, your pit is typically right there. When we go out on these dual sport rides, we're hundreds of miles off grid, days into a trip off grid with only whatever we have in our backpacks to support us. And so we set up a bike differently, and we think through the setup of that bike differently than almost any other kind of bike. And so it makes it unique and special. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions about any of this. I guess I will cut here and end, and then we'll pick up with Dave showing us to install the throttle lock. So here we are with Dave from Atlas Throttle Lock, and Dave has got this very cool lock that he innovated. He came up with this. He's going to put it on this bike. You'll be able to see how it goes on, how quick and easy it is to install. He'll talk about the functionality. Maybe you want to put this on your dual sport.
Yes. Okay, so I came up with this product. It's a mechanical cruise control called the Atlas Throttle Lock. The way it works is it's all laser cut stainless steel. You push this beautiful button right there. This is a stainless spring steel. It pushes out with a friction pad, and this is polyurethane. And so what happens is this flexes up against the throttle housing wall, just on the side of the throttle housing. And you could think of a brake pad on a rotor. And so this is applying friction, which in turn holds your throttle in its position wherever you leave it. You can take your hand off, shake your hand out. You can leave it on and accelerate, and this will just slide up the sidewall of the throttle housing and hold that new position. So it really helps with forearm pump when you're doing long distance. So I came up with this on a paint shaking KTM 640 adventure on an around the world trip. Got the scar to prove it. I had a busted wrist.
Oh, was that from a crash?
BMX.
Oh.
It was a BMX crash at the beginning of my trip, and then hopped on the bike. And so it was broken for about 5 months down in New Zealand. Came up with this product, and then went in for x-rays and found out that it was all blown up. So it was actually a blessing in disguise. But anyways, back to...
Because if that hadn't happened, you never would have come up with this.
No, I wouldn't have had such a problem doing long distance with my throttle hand. I did have one of our now competitors. It's a little pinky workout device. You might have seen those before. And it was just way too cumbersome and frustrating, and realizing that it's year, make, model specific, I thought this wasn't really right or approved. You know, I can't just swap this to my next bike. So coming out with the Atlas.
This is like universal, any bike.
This is universal.
Dirt bike, street bike, whatever.
Yep. So this is what we call our bottom kit. So we're getting into the universal phrase. This is a bottom kit where the mass of it is on the bottom side of the throttle tube. And we have a top kit. It's the mirror opposite of this, where the body of it is up above. And that's to accommodate for bikes with factory heated grip wires on the bottom, like the KTM 690, 1090, 1190, and the Husqvarna equivalent, and some other bikes. So you would go with the top kit typically if you have those KTMs I just rattled off. But this bike does not need heated grips, as you could tell. And so we can slap on a bottom kit here. So what we're gonna do, take this bolt out, and there we go. Okay, so you're gonna apply a friction pad. We have a process in the packaging. It walks you step by step of what to do. This one's our large friction pad, and it's actually positioned just down a little bit because on here there's a circular bevel on the throttle housing wall. We don't want the friction pad touching that. So we want to pull it away from that bevel. Then really nifty design. You don't have to take your grips off or hand guards or anything to install this. You just pop the clamp arm off just like that. This slides into place. So pull the grip back here. This is actually this is a 45 thousandths thick 401 or 304 stainless steel. You need about a 100 thousandths of an inch, 1/10 of an inch to mount this. So that's really no space at all.
So you're talking about the gap right in here.
We got plenty of space here. Oh, tons of space. But that could get shrinked up real tight. All right, so that slides in. You can clock this wherever you want. So if you got smaller hands, or you feel like this just sits better when you're cruising.
And that would change the orientation of where the knobs are. The buttons are either higher or lower.
Now, some people don't really understand this, but we designed it so that it rotates with your throttle. So you're not reaching up to flip a lever or do something. It's literally right where your thumb always is. So that's what makes it, you know, very ergonomic. All right, so slide that in. Take the clamp arm. There's a little V cutout in there that my middle finger is pointing to. And we're gonna get this little tooth in that V cutout, line that up. Then back here, we have this clamping mechanism with a ratchet channel. Just line that up, just do a click or two, just like that. Then, can I get that bolt back? Okay. So then you take this bolt, pre-applied thread locker on it, just thread it in a couple rotations. Oh boy, Look at that, I almost dropped it. You get 2 in your kit. That's exactly why we give you 2. All right. So rotate that down just a bit. Then this is important, you pull that bolt flange up to the base of the bolt. That opens up the geometry for the clamp arm for you to actually ratchet this thing down tight onto the throttle tube. So now you get back over here, there's a little joggle on the back side, and line everything up here. We're gonna ratchet that down. Okay, got the last click out of it. It's a little wobbly and loose here. So now we can clock it as needed. Typically, I mean, what you're seeing here is the font is parallel with the ground. That's typically how we recommend it. All right, so now what we do is we line this stuff up, make sure the friction pads as close to the throttle housing as possible without actually rubbing. And then, okay, that had one more click in it. Straighten everything out. Now there's little tiny teeth on the clamp arm and down on the what we call the body piece that will bite into the plastic or G2 throttle tamer. I've had it, which is aluminum. I've had it also bite into the big ass Boss Haas V8 chrome throttle tubes, and it works actually really well even on metal throttle tubes. But as you're tightening this, we don't give you torque specs because you're literally just biting down onto a piece of plastic. So you don't want to overdo it. If you do overdo it, you'll notice that there's some restriction because the tube's biting down on the handlebar. All you got to do is back it out, quarter turn, check your throttle response. If it's good, then you're done. If not, keep going. So, but we do want this to be tight enough, nice and straight. Let's see here. And there's zero restriction here. All right, so you're cruising, push this button, hold your throttle position, accelerate, and you could leave this on for hours. The idea is not to just use it to shake out your hand, but when you're actually connecting trails, we call this the ultimate trail connector, you just turn the thing on, rest your hand, flip off your friends, wave with your right hand at everybody else that you don't know, and then when you're ready to get back on the trail, hit that button and it's back to factory throttle action.
Now you're like dirt bike again. So because it's so thin, it's not changing the position of your hand against the end of the grip. And it doesn't come forward. Here's something too that's important to note. You want to adjust this so it doesn't come in contact with your brake. True.
So there are aftermarket doohickeys like what we got going on here. Now there's 2 things that you can do in this particular situation. So if I were to know that I had this set up and I'm just getting this bike from Mike today, but what I would do is slap on a top kit, because a top kit moves forward like this, away from all of this that's going on.
The body of this is just inverted up on the top.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, luckily on this instance, we don't have an issue.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but then, yeah. So this one's not going to have an issue. The brakes are pretty tight. They're all recently bled, and so that's something to look out for. So I'm glad you said that. If you find that, oh crap, I changed this thing out, I still have a bottom kit, but now it's nice and tight, go ahead and clock this up just a hair, and then you'll have clearance. That's why we have this cut away as dramatically as we could get it.
Okay, to accommodate that.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Well, I wanted Dave to put that on instead of having me put that on because he did a better job of it than me and also explained it too. So you can either get that from us on takamotoco.co or grab it from Dave at Atlas Throttle Lock.
Yeah, exactly. AtlasThrottleLock.com, but Takamotoco would be good. That works too. And we ship all over the world too, so we could drop ship it for you. We're actually drop shipping it from down the street.
It comes out of Vegas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The warehouse is here in Vegas.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for checking this out. Like and subscribe. Go see what Dave's doing on his Instagram, Facebook, and all the social stuff. Guys, go out and get some adventure.